Hey guys, in today's video, I'm going to be installing a truss on my Dana 30 out of my Jeep XJ. If you're new here, welcome to the channel and don't forget to subscribe. Remember, clean metal makes a clean weld. So make sure that your metal is as clean as possible, free from any oils, free from any rust. So I'm currently doing a bunch of work that I've been putting off on my Spooky Jeep project. Now, I figured it's a good time to get a lot of things done all at once, so I started with the front frame stiffeners. While the axle's already out of the way, it's a good time to go ahead and just re-gear now. But before I re-gear, I want to weld my truss because I'm going to be putting a lot of heat into there and I don't want to ruin anything. So going down the upgrade rabbit hole, I have ended up right here where I'm going to install a truss onto my Dana 30. So the kit that I'm going to be using is from Barnes 4-Wheel Drive. I'll go ahead and leave a link down in the description below to this on their website, as well as another link to this product on Amazon. You can order it on Amazon, you can order it directly through them, it doesn't matter, whatever's most convenient for you. So in the kit, you get this long section here. You also get a little stubby section to go on the opposite side there. Also, because we're going to be cutting off the upper control arm bracket, it's going to come with a kit to weld a new control arm bracket onto the truss. And then it also comes with all these bracing pieces in here. They don't go on top, they go up underneath. But that's pretty much everything that comes in the kit. Now the very first step in this process is getting everything prepped. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off this control arm bracket because we don't need it anymore. And then I'm going to go ahead and continue to clean up everywhere where I'm going to need to weld. Now while this is out, I think it's a perfect time to go ahead and clean up everything, and then it'll all be nice and clean for when I go to paint everything. I can just go ahead and paint the entire axle before I stick it back underneath the Jeep. So I'm going to get started by cutting off my control arm bracket here, which I just realized is bent. Anyway, I'm going to start by cutting off my control arm bracket here, grinding some of this down, and getting it all nice and clean and ready for weld. So it's actually been weeks since I cut the control arm bracket off. I did run into some hiccups, not necessarily with this project, but it made me put this on hold for a little bit. So I am back at it today, and through the magic of editing, it was just like that for you guys. Now I did dry fit everything right after I cut off the control arm bracket, and I did have to round out these holes just a little bit because of where the plasma cutter started and stopped. It had a little bit of a lip there, but that's all right. Just a little bit of sanding took care of that problem. And now we've reached the point where it's time to start kind of tacking some things in place. But I am going to refer to the instructions because this does have a set angle that it is supposed to be at. So I'm going to go ahead and look over the instructions real quick, and we will hop right on it. So I just read over the instructions again, and according to the instructions provided from Barnes 4-Wheel Drive, is you need to start by welding in all of your ribs first. Now everything is slotted, it should go together like a puzzle, and everything should just slide into place, and you should have no problems getting these lined up and set in place. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is get all the ribs in there. I'm going to set it flat down on a flat piece of steel, that way it'll help hold it all in place, and I'm going to go ahead and just tack them on. Alright, now that the ribs are in place, it's time to install the control arm mount. Now how they have this set up is there's really only one way that it could actually mount. There are tabs on the bottom that are different sizes. They fit in the corresponding holes in the truss. They should just set right into place. And then you should be able to fit your DOM sleeve right in through and just center it the best that you can. And go ahead and tack this all in place. Now you do want to make sure that you have it leaning towards the front of the vehicle, but really there's only one way that it can go in. Just make sure that it is centered and stable. I also went ahead and invested in some new welding gloves. I could pick these up at Home Depot, but We'll see how they work out. They've got to be way better than the mechanics gloves that I keep burning through all the time. Bright lights are better than gold. Let it go. So I know that I had originally said I was going to wait and finish weld everything together, but as I was welding in my control arm mount, I figured it almost fell. While I was welding in my control arm bracket, I just went ahead and finish welded everything on the outside. Honestly, I got to thinking about it, and honestly, I thought it was a lot better idea to finish weld everything because I'm going to be putting a lot of heat into this. And the more heat I put into it after it is secured to the axle, the more likely it is to banana or potato chip or warp, whatever terminology you guys want to use. But I figured it would be a better idea just to blow through it all while I was already fired up. So that's what I did. Next thing we're going to want to do, according to the instructions, is go ahead and get this lined up. The instructions say that you want it offset 9 degrees from the face of your differential. So in order to align that, I have a digital angle finder here. These are pretty cheap. I'll go ahead and put a link down in the description below. I bought this a couple of years ago and it was an amazing buy for only like $20. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my angle finder. It has a magnetic base. I'm going to stick it right to the face of my differential here. Go ahead and turn it on. Make sure that it is at 0. And then I'm going to place it. And then I'm going to place it on my axle truss here. And just make sure that that says about 9 degrees. 8.9, close enough. We're going to stick with that. And all I need to do is go ahead and tack this in place. The instructions also say that you want a 9-degree offset for the opposite side. This little short stubby piece over here, I don't think it's as important that you line it up exactly at 9 degrees like you would this one, because nothing's actually mounting to it. But try to get it close as possible. If you're a little bit off, you're a little bit off. It's not that big a deal. So I'm going to go ahead and get this tacked in place and we'll move on to the next step. Now that I'm all tacked in place, I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of finish welding and then take a break from it for a while and come back to it and do a little more finish welding. The reason for that is I don't want to put too much heat into it because once again, the more heat you put into it all at once, the more likely it is to warp and cause problems. So it's a really good idea to do about a 1-inch weld with a 1-inch stagger. So 1-inch welds, 1 inch apart, but you don't want to just weld straight in a line. You kind of want to bounce around a little bit. So do a little bit of welding over here, maybe a little bit over there, a little bit up here, maybe a little bit over there, just a little bit at a time. And this is going to be only on the truss and the tube itself. We are going to save the pumpkin housing for last because there is some special things that we need to do to the actual axle housing itself in order to make it weldable. So I'm going to go ahead and do some welding on the truss itself as well as the axle tube. Leave my pumpkin alone for right now. Take a break, let it cool off. Come back to it. Take a break, let it cool off. Come back to it, and then we will take care of the pumpkin later. So I've been doing a lot of welding here and there, just trying to make sure that I'm not putting too much heat into this all at one time. And now it's time to move on to the pumpkin. Now my welding bench isn't long enough for an axle, so I've got a pipe through my axle, got a jack stand at one end, and got it kind of suspended using my press, and that way I can move it around however I need to easily. So that way I can roll it if I need to. I can roll it back and forth, but this will actually help me a whole lot when I go to weld on the pumpkin, which is going to be right now. So in order to weld on the pumpkin, because it is cast metal, because the housing itself is a different material than the truss, there are some special things we need to do in order to weld the two together. The first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and heat up my housing to about 400 degrees. Make sure that it's nice and hot. And then go ahead and do my welding. The entire time I'm welding, I want to make sure that the axle housing and the metal that I'm welding to it are the same temperature the entire time that I'm welding. So periodically I might need to apply more heat to either the truss or the pumpkin to try to keep them within the same temperature range as much as possible. Now the reason for this is they cool at different rates. So if one of the types of metal is cooling off too rapidly, it will actually cause it to crack. More than likely what will actually happen is the weld will pull away from the cast and then you will have no good weld there. You're going to have to grind it all out and start over. Now to assist with this, once I'm all done welding, I'm going to wrap this in a blanket nice and tight to try to help hold in all the heat. That way it will cool down as slow as possible and it will help reduce the risk of any cracking of any material. Now in order to heat up your metal, you can use a propane torch if that's all you need, but it might take a whole lot to be able to heat it up. If you're going to be using a propane torch, I highly recommend you use MAP gas instead. It burns a little bit hotter and it will help heat everything up a whole lot easier and you're less likely to run into any problems. Me, I'm going to use oxyacetylene because that's what I have on hand and it heats a whole lot really fast. I shouldn't run into any problems. It should work just great. I've got a nice large tip on here. That way I can try to heat up a large area at once. And I'm just going to go ahead and heat up everything uniformly as much as possible. Now to check my temperatures, I actually have a little temp gun here. This was really cheap. It was less than 20 bucks at Harbor Freight when I bought it. And it is pretty accurate. It works really great. You just pull the trigger, shines a little laser. You can point it at whatever you're trying to read. And we can see that this top piece of this metal here is at 80.2 degrees. So this works really good. If you need one of these, I'll go ahead and leave a link down in the description below. They've got them on Amazon for relatively cheap as well. I'll just throw a link down there. Go ahead and check it out. So right now what I'm going to do is go ahead and start heating this up to 400 degrees and then start my welding. Not quite there yet. All right, and now that the welding's done, we're going to wrap it as much as possible. This is just a fiberglass welding blanket I have here. I picked it up at Harbor Freight. If you're interested, in one of these blankets, I'll go ahead and leave. I'll go ahead and leave a link down in the description below. So I'm going to be using that blanket as well as this Snuggie. Who remembers the Snuggie? Anyway, this one's got pockets, sleeves, everything else. If you want a Snuggie, I'll go ahead and leave a link down in the description below. All right, and now I'm just going to let this sit to cool as slowly as possible, maybe a day or so. I don't know. I'm probably not going to get back to this for another couple of days. My nephew's birthday party's coming up, so I'm probably going to be doing that this weekend instead of working on anything. I'm going to let this cool off, and I will see you guys whenever, and we'll pull this off and we'll take a look at it. All right, and here it is in all its glory, pretty much all finished up. I do want to do some more welding. There's a few spots that just look unfinished to me, so I'm going to go ahead and take care of those just because it bugs me. But there's nothing wrong with any of this. This will hold, this will work great, and this is extremely strong. Now, I did have some welds that cracked on the pumpkin, but that's all right. They were some small welds that really was just me trying to fill in there because I felt like it needed to be there. Other than that, the welds that are there that are actually holding good tight to metal, none of them cracked. So this is gonna be great. So now all that's left is some cleanup and some paint and get my bushing in here, which it does come with a new bushing to go into the control arm mount, and slap it under the Jeep. I'm extremely happy with the way that it turned out. I am gonna do a little bit more welding, but that's just because it's on me. But that's just because I feel like the weld should be there. So that's going to be it for this video. If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. As always, don't forget to subscribe. You can check me out on Instagram at It's Project Venture, as well as the Tickety Talk at It's Project Venture. Don't forget to go check out Barnes 4-Wheel Drive. I'll leave a link down in the description below to this, as well as their website. Anyway, thanks for watching.